So, there was a huge far-right rally in London at the weekend. A lot of the usual far-right suspects organised by that wee pan-faced cunt Robinson. They like to invoke concepts of national identity, like Englishness and Britishness. But here's some true history that tells you the real story of this island. In other words, English, here's a history lesson for yous. The truth about your so-called ethnicity. Firstly, did you know the British had African and Arab rulers? Never mind residents, rulers. Because the Roman province of Britannia was ruled by a number of African and Arab-born Roman emperors, including Septimius Severus, who was born in Africa and died in York, then called Eboracum. His son, Caracalla, who was half African, half Arab, was the next emperor, and was declared so in York on his father's death. It was called Eboracum, by the way, as the old Welsh-related Celtic language spoken by the locals in what is today Northern England called it place of the yew tree. When the Anglo-Saxons eventually got here, your ancestors, they thought all the Roman architecture and roads were built by giants, by the way. So about as clued up as your modern flag shagger. They thought it meant wild boar, so changed it to Eoforwich. Eofor was your word for boar. It's close to the modern German word Eber for pig. The whole 2 World Wars, 1 World Cup thing, it's just one set of Germans versus another. Then when the Vikings conquered England, they couldn't pronounce Eoforwich, so they just called it Jorvik, which is where the modern city York gets its name. There was also a Roman emperor who ruled over Britain and the rest of the empire who was 100% Arab. He was called Philip the Arab. So literally before any of your English ancestors had arrived here, the place had been ruled by Africans and Arabs. You came here as the Roman Empire was falling in Britain. 2 German-speaking guys called Hengist and Horsa, who were mercenaries, are said to be the first Saxons here. And there wasn't even one type of English. There was the Angles, the Saxons and the Jutes. So if you're wanting to talk about your ethnicity, the English are Northern Germans from one of 3 separate ethnic tribes. Even look at the Union Jack. You know it's like flying the EU flag or the UN. It's a union, not an ethnic group or even a nation-state's flag. It's a union between 4 nations. And you know, after Rome fell, who kept Western civilization going? The reason that we have translations today of the ancient Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, and a whole load of other lost knowledge. Also the inventors of modern mathematics. It was the Muslim empires of the Middle Ages. They were way more advanced than the shite hole you English built in Roman Britain's place. Algebra, that's an Arabic word. And that Daily Express version of England you all love to pump into AI, the night and all that, that England wasn't even built by the English. It was built on your backs maybe, but it was built by the Normans, who were Vikings who settled in northern France. A bit like how post-war Britain was built on the backs of the Windrush generation and South Asians who came here to rebuild after the war. Or a bit like how the British Empire was built on the backs of black and brown people from around the world. Immigration is natural. The Great Replacement theory is shite stirred up from the Kremlin. That's a fact. To try and divide us. To attack our democracy. It's like the wartime propaganda people here were subjected to during World War II. Hitler's only got 1 ball, the other's in the Albert Hall. That's the Great Replacement theory. And immigrants also contribute more than the average white English person. Look at this.
There's an interesting study here. This is from the Office of Budget Responsibility, basically showing you in someone's life how much they are taking away from the state. So if that line is below the middle line, then they are taking away, and how much they are contributing to the state. So childhood, we tend to be net recipients of benefits and indeed payments from the state. Then you go through the kind of prime of your working life, you're putting taxes in, and then when you're retired and when you're potentially in old age, you're taking more money back in net terms. That's UK residents. Have a look at the shape of these lines when it comes to immigrants, because it's kind of striking. Obviously, they're not coming in until later in life, typically. And so during that period, the average migrant actually is putting in more to the system in, cumulative terms than the average UK resident. So for some people who, for instance, are earning lots more money, putting more taxes into the system with high wages, they're actually contributing even more.
And if you didn't understand that history lesson, and still support the flag shagging? Maybe accept you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And from a person who does, let me also tell you, you are all 100% far right, like an English form of Nazism. What is it with you Germans and being into Nazism, man? Saturday's rally in London, Farage, all your comments on Facebook, it's pure racism. And finally, remember, you're an immigrant here too, and if you don't like it here, you can go home.